record their apologies. Honorable members, with that said,
Chair.
Yes. Yeah, who's that? Okay. Let us, honorable members, get into the thick of things, into looking at our budget vote report. I will now invite both our content advisors, Dr. Manente, as well as Mam Kashe, to take us through the budget vote report. Can I humbly request that all honorable members and other staff that are with us, please mute your microphones, and also you can switch off your video while someone is speaking, but should you want to speak, please switch on your video so we can see who's speaking and who's presenting. Thank you. Content advisors, you may proceed.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, and good morning, honorable members. What we suggest that we do, on the basis that the report has been circulated, we suggest that we go straight to observations and have a discussion around what we thought were the key observations for from the committee, and then after that we then highlight what the recommendations are. And what you will notice is that in some respect, because of the kind of issues that are related, we will then go straight to, we'll try and combine some of the recommendations. I'm not too sure if Mam Kakaza is able to load to share the report, and we go straight to the observations. Is it possible, Mr. Kakaza?
Yes, let's request the Secretariat to upload the presentation so that we may follow on our screens as well. Manyamza, Kakas, please assist in uploading that.
And while they do that, Nokuzola will kickstart the discussion, taking us through administration and the programs that follow. She will mostly deal with the programs that relates to the former Department of Agriculture, and I will deal with the programs that relate to, the former Department of Rural Development and Land Reform. And where there's the issues have sort of been combined, like in the program 3, we will always, the issues will always overlap. Nokuzola, I think you can take over.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm waiting for the screen to load. I don't see it, the report.
Manyamza, Ankakaza, can you assist with uploading the presentation?
For IT to assist. Waiting for IT to assist.
Okay.
Chair?
Is it showing?
Not yet.
Yes,
Chair? Can we, in the meantime, consider the minutes, or it is showing now? It's showing, Chair.
Yes,
Okay.
it's showing.
Chair, I'm really sorry, but remember Mahlo is not doing justice to us.
Yes, can we request honorable members to mute your microphones? And if you are attending to other business outside the committee work, please attend it outside this forum. Thank you. Ma'am Kasha, you may proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start with the observation on page 37 of the report. I couldn't see it on my side, but I have just opened it from my computer, so I'll speak to it from my screen.
Okay.
In terms of observation, we've divided them into department and entities. So one of the key issues, the very first one for the department, is the matter of the budget. And while we understand what the country is going through in terms of the fiscal constraints, but the members have raised concern with the reduction in the department's budget, particularly in key programs such as food security, land reform, and restitution, which are the key and focus programs of the department, as well as rural development. It's felt that this is contrary to the department's strategic focus for the medium term, and also could undermine service delivery in terms of NDP's mandate as articulated in the MTSF. Further, the reduction in the budget of the department also impact transfers to entities. Members will recall that the ARC budget has been decreasing in real terms for the past MTEF, including the current one, and that is linked to the total budget that is allocated to the vote. The second one, for the first time, the department has set out clear targets for all vulnerable groups, which is also reflected in its plans in terms of participation of women, youth, and people with disabilities. And this is also reflected in its... Chair? Chair?
Just hold on. Honorable members, are you able to see the presentation? Because I'm not seeing it on the screen.
It was there, Chair, earlier on, but it has since vanished.
It's gone now. We're only seeing her face now.
I also couldn't see it, so I was just reading from my own copy.
Yeah, this is why I'm stopping, because we had it earlier on and then it seems to have just gone. So we don't want you to gallop ahead and leave us behind. Can we get IT to assist the Secretariat to upload this?
No, I had it on, but I saw somebody removed it. So I thought maybe it's IT. So let me try again. Is it back on?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yes.
Yeah,
Not
back.
yet.
Okay, but if somebody removed it, I don't know who it was.
There it is.
Can see it now.
Okay.
Okay. We're with you. Natasha, you may
can,
proceed then.
Can you open up the screen, Chief? Thank you. And then we go to 6.2.2. You have to assist me with moving down.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. Namsha from ICT.
Up to Lilo. I think you are on commission now, you're still on department.
Sorry, Chair. There's a guy
Yes,
from IT. There's an IT technician who wants to assist.
6.1.2.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Namja from ICT. What we could do is we could give request, we could give control to the person that needs to do the presentation so they can move it up and down as they please. Hello?
Okay, they should do that then.
Yes. So on the navigation bar, the navigation bar is the one that has your camera. There is a button that says request control. So I would like the user to press on that button.
What is it that I should press?
Request control.
Request.
No, the request for the person that needs to take control of the presentation.
Where is that one?
Next to the
on the navigation bar. Yes, next to the hang up button. Are you seeing it?
Or I can take it down and Knox, you share it from your side.
Yeah, I'm okay with my colleague just controlling it.
Oh, okay, fine then.
Let's proceed.
6 point. Okay, I'll say 0.3. Doctor. 6.1.3.
6.1.3.
Yes, 0.3. Yes. Okay. 6.1.3 is about the uncertainty regarding the department's capacity to develop legislation and policies, especially the key ones that are quite important in addressing sectoral challenges. In this regard, examples were made of the communal land tenure bill in terms of land reform and the preservation and development of agricultural land bill. Members should note that these pieces of legislation have been under development for the past 5 years. In terms of policies, a white paper on land policy, there's been a long talk about it, but it hasn't come forth. And also the National Policy on Comprehensive Producer Development Support, it hasn't been finalized. However, it has been included for implementation in the APP. The next one was the concern regarding the merger, how the department has gone about it, the reconfiguration of the new structure and the combination of programs, particularly in combining food security, land reform, and restitution into one program. And as program 3, which they could not justify because there is no clear alignment in its interventions. In the APP, land reform is the targets or the indicators for land reform and restitution are not necessarily aligned to the targets of food security. And secondly, the land reform, including restitution and food security on their own, are quite key and complex with so many issues for them to be combined as one program. Can you go down a little bit? Can you go down, Doctor? I've frozen. Yes, thank you. I think one of the issues was the department didn't appreciate the opportunity that was provided by the configuration process in addressing some of the issues that members have previously raised in respect of the support programs, where the former Land Reform Department has its own programs, and the Department of Agriculture had their own, and that is still the case, particularly when we talk of the LDS, Land Development Support Program for commercialization. And then on one hand, on the agricultural side, they have the blended finance scheme. The next one is also in terms of programs, the support, actually moving up and down, I'm not sure where am I. Go up a little bit. Okay, I'll just talk to the program on my screen. As long as members can hear it, I'll say where am I. That makes it easier. I'm on 5. I've already spoken to it, and in terms of the conditional grants, the focus still being on primary agricultural activities, while there are opportunities in other sectors such as agro-processing, and also highlighting the fact that now the department is developing the agriculture and agro-processing master plan, which will drive the contribution of these sectors, particularly in employment creation. I'm in 6.1.6 on page 38. Given that the conditional grants are implemented by provinces, the department didn't present, or it was not included in the plans, a clear monitoring and evaluation framework, which its absence will likely affect the accountability on performance and service delivery. And this only does not apply to conditional grants, but to allocations to entities. For example, half of the budget of the department goes to transfers and subsidies, and that's conditional grants, and also to entities, and the entities also include the land bank. Seven, one of the observations was that the department has previously promised that they were developing a policy on the commercialization of Black producers. So the committee felt that there still a need for further engagements and discussion on the commercialization and the blended finance schemes, particularly as the program was first pronounced in 2017 and funding was allocated from 2018, yet there haven't been any progress reports in this regard. And also the sector transformation instruments such as the Agri-BE Fund and MAFISA, which are all administered by the Land Bank. I think one of the concerns was the fact that the current situation that the Land Bank is in terms of finances, for the department to still be allocating, for example, for the current year, 408 million between program entry and 5 will be transferred to the Land Bank for commercialization and transformation activities. 8, one of the concerns was poor oversight and support of some of the public entities by the department. And in this regard, also to ensure that their strategic plans and APPs are aligned to their legislative mandates. And it's been highlighted that some of the entities have become implementing agents of the departments for example, the NAMC implementing programs for the former Dr. DLR, and also ARC doing some work for the department for which it hasn't been paid for. The committee felt that the challenges that are experienced by the OPP and the ARC, and also the governance challenges in the OPG, which was also compounded by the absence of an accounting officer since its inception, was one of the key issues that may have resulted to the department not conducting oversight and supporting the entities to ensure that they carry out their mandates. I think this is the last one for the department. It's about alignment of activities, which is linked to the previous one in terms of support and oversight by the department to the entities. So the department's program 5 deals with marketing and trade issues, and so is the NAMC. Specifically in respect of producer training and support for market access, there's no clear alignment what the NAMC is responsible for and what the department through program 5 is doing, because both are doing some form of training to ensure that producers gain access to market. So in this regard, better coordination to avoid duplication was highlighted, and also bearing in mind that the country is party to the trade agreement on African Continental Free Trade Area, which the committee was briefed on last week. So there are no clear performance indicators on how the department will assist local producers to benefit from the agreement. I will hand over to Dr. Manenje to speak on observations on the commission.
Okay, thank you so much. We decided to put recommendations on the commission, even though the APP speaks about program 3 and include restitution. But because from the parliament side, we know the commission as a body that has sort of been established in the legislation, the Restitution of Land Rights Act, which is also meant to report back to Parliament on an annual basis. So we decided to put it not as part of program 3, but elevate it to a commission as it was meant to be. So one of the observations, there was the discussion about the commission's autonomy and when that is going to happen. So the discussion there was around when is that going to happen. So an observation we're making here is that the commission now, its program has been made a sub program of the broader program on the land reform and restitution. That's program 3. Yet this is a commission which is meant to be an autonomous body. Secondly, is that in relation to that, the accounting officer, that is the Chief Land Claims Commissioner as the head of the commission, becomes less visible under this strategic plan of the department. The second thing is the key crucial performance areas of the commission, which emanate from the Restitution of Land Rights Act, do not appear in this APP. So the failure of this, of the plans to address such verification, that includes those key areas that we identified from the discussion, was research, verification, property valuation. In the past, we were told that those were the key weaknesses in the commission. And if you know, we are observing that if we do not see them in the plans, it makes it very difficult for this committee to do oversight on those issues, and they are really a part of the key part of the annual report of the commission. And we noted the discussion around the fact that these are included in the project Cpas, but none of the plans presented articulate the key milestones of the project. So it seems like project Cpas, it's something separate there, and the APP is something separate there. Yes, you see them in the discussion, in the highlighting of the key, in terms of the analysis of the context and identification of problems and all that. But when it boils down to APP and plans and targets, there are not the two targets that we have. It's around settlement and finalization of claims. There were no adequate reasons provided for the delays in the finalization of outstanding claims, and no plans in place to deal with the issue of land claims in the provinces like Limpopo, Mpumalanga, KwaZulu, and members will remember that this is where you were saying it seems that the majority of the claims are in these provinces. But in terms of the plans, there wasn't clear strategy around that. The one part we also picked up was around when members said, but when we go around doing oversight, many people do not seem to know about progress of their claims. So in terms of the observation, we said an absence of an outcome indicator for customer certification on claims and failure to present progress reports on the status of land claims in the country. So that leads to many people saying we've lodged claims and we don't know what's happening. We have not been paid. Other people have been paid and we have not been paid. The next observations we recorded relates to the KwaZulu-Natal Ingonyama Trust Board. We noted in terms of the observation that outstanding progress report with regard to the work done by the interministerial task team that was to deal with the issues of the ITB. There were no clear programs to deal with the empowerment of youth, women and people with disability in the rural communities in line with the purpose of the board, that is management of the trust for material well-being of traditional communities living on the Ingonyama Trust land. The number of vacancies at the ITB and the suspension or precautionary leave of CEO and CFO, a total of 6 top officials were on precautionary leave, and information on the survey of the Ingonyama land. So that also we found that it wasn't clear. The table strategic plan and APP of the ITP did not contain budget information. Therefore, the status of the budget presented in the committee briefing is uncertain in as far as that component of the budget is concerned. With regard to the Office of the Valuer General, the observation here is that building the capacity of the OVG without clarifying its mandate, the discussion about what they are meant to do. So what we're saying is building the capacity of the OVG. Yes, we know that we need to have more valuers and all that, but without clarifying the mandate is unlikely to bring any fundamental change, especially in relation to dispute to the valuations, and thus delaying acquisition of land. Clarification of the mandate might require legislative amendments to ensure that its functions are in accord with the legislation. One of the observation again is the need to fast track the filling of vacancies at the OVG, particularly of the 21 additional critical posts that have been approved to enable the entity to reduce the turnaround time to complete valuations from 125 days to 50 days as planned for 2021 financial year. The OVG should have its own enterprise resource planning software system and should able to function on its own. I'll hand over to Nokuzola to then deal with the Agricultural Research Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. In terms of the Agricultural Research Council, one of the issues that have been emphasized by members was the slow progress in the construction of the foot and mouth disease vaccine facility. And here I just want to remind members that while the OPP is responsible for vaccine manufacturing, the foot and mouth disease vaccine is supposed to be manufactured by the ARC. It has all the capacity, the research capacity, and the vaccine facility has always been with them. So the funding for the construction of the facility was first transferred to the ARC during the 2018-19 financial year, but to date, construction hasn't started. So the committee felt that the fast tracking of that project is of crucial importance, particularly that with the fact that FMD continues to be one of the outbreaks that the country is grappling with. And also the country cannot continue being dependent on imports in terms of the FMD vaccine. Currently, we, as the country, mostly import the vaccine from Botswana. And that means, for example, that may have an impact if Botswana as well can have an outbreak in terms of limited supplies. The second one was given the financial challenges that the ARC has and the fact that its parliamentary grant hasn't been increasing for some time, they have presented a turnaround strategy, which includes optimizing personnel costs. And the committee concern in this regard was the loss of critical expertise because the process may lead to retrenchments or resignations of critical personnel if they are uncertain about their future. And although the ARC has highlighted that through the professional development program, which has been in existence for more than 10 years, the ARC has been losing research expertise. So the concern was on how the ARC would effectively implement the strategy without losing the research capacity. In terms of the Onderstepoort biological project, most of the OPP challenges are linked to the aging infrastructure, which is the vaccine manufacturing factory. And while this is understandable, the committee felt that there is a need to fast track the finalization of the modernization of that facility to ensure that it is compliant with good manufacturing practices so that the OPP can be able to recapture some of the lost markets. And the second key issue was the appreciation of the engagement that the OPP has since had with the department and the ministry, and which further led to the entity developing a strategy to facilitate the procurement of vaccines by government and provinces from the OPP. That was commended. However, the committee felt that there should be milestones attached and also including the period that the OPP aims that by this time, a certain number of provinces should be sourcing vaccines from the OPP instead of other private competitors. In terms of the National Agricultural Marketing Council, One of the issues that was raised by the committee during discussions was the lack of alignment between the Marketing Council's APP and the presentation that it did to the committee. This is in respect of key performance areas or targets and also financial information, where some of this information was not included in the actual APP, or at least details of which was not included, but it was presented in the presentation. Also, the OPP didn't include its five operational divisions. These were divisions that it always had, but considering that this is the new administration, so the new strategic plan and APP, the committee highlighted the fact that the OPP didn't outline those operational divisions in the APP. However, it did make mention of them in the presentation. One of the key projects of the NAMC, or it's in terms of smallholder support, is the National Red Meat Development Program. The NAMC is a facilitator of the program, and previously it was largely funded by the former Department of Rural Development and Reform, and in some cases, provinces. The program has assisted, the committee acknowledged the fact that the program has assisted in the few provinces where it has been implemented, the smallholder livestock owners in accessing markets. However, the NAMC, since the NAMC has highlighted that the contract they had with the former Department of Rural Development, which is part of the current department now, is expiring in September 2020. So this may affect the sustainability or expansion of the program to other provinces. The last observation was in terms of strengthening collaborations between the National Agricultural Marketing Council, the department, and the Perishable Products Export Control Board in identifying and securing of new export markets in light of the challenges, some of which will be compounded by the current COVID-19 pandemic, and also the negative impact that reduction in exports has on employment in the sector. Members, this is the conclusion of the observations. I'm not sure if members want to make inputs before we go to recommendations.
Thank you, Mam Kasha, as well as Dr. Manenje. Honorable members, there's the presentation by the content advisors. I will check through each member. If there's any input or questions of clarity you would like to make at this juncture before we proceed to recommendations. Can I start with Honorable Capa?
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't have any comment at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Chwete.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm not sure, Chair, whether I've missed something here. In the report, I did not hear the President saying anything about what we recommended as a committee on the issue of land bank, its role, and what is currently happening. I'm not sure, Chair, whether I've missed something there. I'm subjected to be corrected. Then, if not, then I can add my some of my thoughts on recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, they will come back to that. Honorable Mbabama.
Sorry, Chair. I was just unmuting. I think the report is comprehensive, Chair. The only thing that I missed is any mention of drought at all. I don't see anything or recommendations around a drought strategy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mbabama. Can we have Honorable Matthias? Honorable Matthias.
Morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Ndate.
Morning, everybody. Look, Chair, the guidance that the committee members were asking for, or the secretariat, was whether should we proceed to listen to their observations or to make some comments on the presentation that they've made. My take is that let them proceed to table or to present recommendations and see if there is alignment between what they have observed and what they are recommending as a way forward. And it's only then that we, as members, can make our submission.
Thank you, Matthias. Do keep in mind that this is the committee's report, and therefore the content advisors were capturing our thought process and our engagements with the department. We are at this position, want to see and ascertain from members if the report has captured all that they would have wanted to be captured before we hop on to the recommendations. So it is at this juncture that I'm trying to facilitate from all honorable members that what they thought we had engaged has been a true reflection before we start speaking to the recommendation, so that we are certain that all that the committee work has been doing has been captured correctly before we can then jump into the recommendations. Can we have Honorable Mahlatsi? Mahlatsi? Okay, Honorable Mahlo. Honorable Mahlo. Let's move on to Honorable Briet.
Thank you, Chairperson. No, I would just like to agree with Honourable Mbabama that I think we just need to add drought in, but I think maybe that would be sufficient when we get to the recommendations. But that was my only input as well. Thank you, Chair. Otherwise, I think it really is, it was captured excellently. Thank you to our wonderful committee staff.
Thank you, Ms. Briet. Ntate Masipa, Honorable Masipa.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, Ntate Masipa.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I just want to, I have gone through the report, page 15 and 16, around the issues of land bank.
Yes.
I think the statement says, in light of the land bank's financial liquidity status, it's being under business rescue and lack of accountability on the scheme. I don't think that we have captured this correctly. The bank is not under business rescue. I think even the issues of land bank has not been clarified as accountability issues. So maybe we need to relook at that statement in terms of the issues there.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it further says that the committee was concerned with the absence of an accountability framework. Again, I think that's perhaps not the right statement to have made there. Other than that, Chair, I think the rest are just technical stuff. Page 60, maybe just for clarity, the rationale for increasing, just at the last sentence there, it says, I mean, the last bullet point, it says the rationale for increasing the target, including the department's capability to commercialize 2,500 in the MTSF period, meaning 500 farmers per year. I'm not sure about this numbers. As far as I'm concerned, I think the number that I'm quite 100% is 450 farmers on the MTF. I just wanted to just get some clarity there on those numbers. Yeah, on the CRL, page 18, the last paragraph. I mean, sorry, the last the last bullet, last two lines. It states that the CRLR is expected to finalize 1,411 land claims over the medium term at a cost of 8.7 billion. I'm not sure. I think we must just check the minutes if the amount was given to us in terms of the land claims that the department or the commission is planning to finalize. Chair, I think I'm covered in terms of the issues that I wanted to raise. I think, yeah, the rest I think are just small technical stuff. Thanks.
Thank you. Honorable Chapter.
Thanks, Chair. Let me also echo the sentiment that this is a very comprehensive report and we applaud the content advisors in this regard. Chair, mine is on the OVG. Besides
Yes.
the 21 critical vacancies, the committee expressed itself on the dissatisfaction with an acting CEO for over a year. We can't have an entity that doesn't have leadership, that there's no certainty. So that should also reflect. And the ARC, there was also a point on our report and that we spoke about that besides them dealing with mentorship and we resuscitating, finding a way of assisting ARC, it cannot only be an implementing agent for the department, because this is what brought it to this department owing it about 55 million. So that matter should also be highlighted so that ARC focuses on what it is supposed to do instead of now government department using it as an implementing agent and they owe it a lot of money that puts it down. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, have I covered everyone? Is there anyone that is with us that I have not recognized? Mam Kash, Mandi Pindise Goe, not Dr. Manenge. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair. Can you hear me, Chair? Hello?
Yes, Honorable Montwet.
Hey, Angatsola Pelindade.
Oh, yes. Please, proceed.
Chair. Chair?
Yes, my apologies, Dr. Montwet. Please proceed.
It's fine. Thank you, Chair. Chair, the issue that I wanted to raise, Chair, is with regard to the observation that we as a committee have had, especially with regard to CPA, that there's a lot and lot of hectares of land that are handed over to CPAs for CPAs to run. But currently, the CPAs are not compliant with the CPA Act. Number two, there are lots and lots of conflicts with CPAs. Now, the observation that I've made, Chair, is that these conflicts that normally do arise in CPAs leave a lot of land not being put to productive use because there are conflicts. In some instances, they enter into lease agreements with people, there are litigations, this and this. Now, a lot of land remains unproductive. And it's an observation that I've actually picked up in this current year. Now, maybe going into recommendations, one would just put, when you go to the recommendations, something that would actually look into remedying that situation. Because we can't afford a situation where a lot of land remains unused because of conflicts that are in the CPAs, and the department does not have any right or anything to say and intervene in resolving problems that the CPAs might have, Chair. The other one, Chair, is on the recapitalization program of the department. When the department procures or allocates a farm to a certain farmer, they normally they follow these processes that they follow, and then somebody is then allocated a farm. Now, what I have observed, Chair, is that if a farm was in production and it is now given to somebody else, the productivity into that farm goes down. It will no longer be productive as it was before. Let's say it's a crop farm. The people who were initially there, they take their mechanization and leave. Department just buys the farm with infrastructure. Now, somebody who comes into the farm does not have the mechanization to work the land. That, in a way, Chair, disrupts productivity in the farm and puts food security at risk. Now, we can't afford that situation. The ideal situation would be, as soon as a farm is allocated into a farmer, the recapitalization, it must be a package where the very same farm is recapitalized so that it does not disrupt the productivity of that particular farm. I'll be able to speak at length about the how to remedy that situation where the productivity at the farm is actually slowed or there's no productivity at the farm when we come at the recommendations side, Chair. The last one, Chair, what I've observed was made by Mayor Nokuzola now, that the role played by NAMAC and the Program 5 of the department. The observation, Chair, is that there's a duplication in terms of role that Program 5 of the department and NAMAC does. Now, I want to extend it further in what I said in last meeting to say, are some of these entities today, since there's a merge of the two departments, are the entities still relevant, some of them? Can't we perhaps see a merger of some of these entities? If we can agree on some of those observations, we should actually be able to then speak to the recommendations on how to go about remedying some of those that I would respectfully want to submit as recommendations to the committee. Mandela.
Thank you, Dr. Mtwedi, for the input. Ma'am Kasha, please go ahead with Dr. Manenja.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll start with Ms. Chwete. The land bank, I think she referred to a recommendation rather than observation. So I'm hoping that the land bank will talk to it when we get to the recommendations. Regarding to what Mr. Masipa said about the land bank, or his concerns, those are reflected in previous committee engagements with the land bank, including the last budgetary review of the committee. The land bank, the department doesn't have an accountability framework for the monies that it transfers to the land bank. The committee has been asking for a report, for example, the blended finance scheme, how it has been used, and also the Mafisa program, and the Agri-BE fund, and the committee hasn't received those reports yet. And secondly, I would also like to remind the committee that last year, the former Department of Rural Development also has transferred some monies to the land bank, which it records as they reported to the committee that they found out that the monies were not utilized for what they were meant for. The department at some stage also, the former Department of Agriculture also suspended the transfers for the Agri-BE fund to the land bank as a result of lack of reporting on how the funds have been utilized. There have been some disagreements between the department and the land bank on how the funds that they transfer were used. So the committee did question the reasoning behind the continued transfer of monies to the land bank, given that the department has previously raised challenges, particularly with the implementation of the blended finance scheme as well. And the land bank, it's just that now my notes are, I can't find. There is a report about the land bank being under business rescue, and it is on junk status. So it is a concern that the department should be transferring large sums of money to the bank that is facing financial problems. 2,500 commercialization of 2,500. Actually, I don't know which member it was. The member even asked, members even asked a question about that. The 450 was pronounced in the SONA in 2017, and the department hasn't been reported what it has, what progress it has made in commercializing the 450. Instead, in the current strategic plan, they do have 2,500 now. Instead, they have increased from 450 to 2,500 producers that they plan to commercialize. It's in the strategic plan. I don't have it in front of me, otherwise I'll point you to the page. What else? I took note of what Mehlape mentioned about the ARC being capacitated or getting enough funding, including the department paying its debt for it to be able to carry out its research mandate instead of being an implementing agent of some of the departmental projects. Mr. Muntwedi, the merger of entities, the NAMC and the PPECB have completely different mandates. The PPECB is solely responsible for the export of perishable products, not all agricultural products, but only perishable ones, and also issuing of export certificates of perishable ones. However, in carrying out its duties, at some times it is required to assist farmers with accessing export markets for perishable products. So in terms of alignment, it can only be in that regard, where the PPECB is assisting farmers with accessing export markets, but farmers, producers of perishable products. The NAMC, on the other hand, is its mandate is an advisory body to the minister and also to the department, and it also carries out additional activities as pronounced by the minister as per the Act. For just like it is coordinating the infrastructure projects and also the agriculture and agro-processing master plan. So in terms of alignment of functions between the NAMC and the department, it's specifically with respect to training of producers or agro-processors for market access, and also assisting the producers to accessing markets. The program 5, the department has that component, and so is the NAMC. Otherwise, program 5 currently is broader than that, as it also now implements some components of rural development with respect to the farmer production support units. I think I've covered the issues on agriculture. I will hand over to Dr. Manenje.
Dr. Manenje?
All right. No. Okay. No, thank you so much, and we welcome the issues that were suggested for inclusion in the recommendations. One being the issue about the OVG and one of the capacity issues, the issues of the appointment of the CEO. I think we will include it because it's important. When we come to issues of the CPAs, yes, it doesn't appear in the summary of recommendations, but if you look at the report, we do indicate that the compliance issues are a problem. In the APP, they do mention what they are going to do to, I'm looking for a right word that they use, but yes, to develop capacity of the CPA. So I think it's if you link that with the amount of land reform projects that collapse due to the functionality of CPAs, I do agree that maybe we need to include the CPA's observations. Okay, and with regard to the amounts of the land claim, that the amount of land claims to be settled and to be finalized, what you would see in the plans of the department is that for 2021 is 454 land claims to be settled. That's 2021. But if you then add 2021 and 22, the period, that increases. So I'm not too sure what the concern was in terms of that numbers. But if you add the number of land claims to be settled and those to be finalized, so you add 454 to be finalized, 479. So maybe I just need to break them down to make it more clearly, as a member, honorable member has raised, that let's just clarify the numbers in terms of this year and in terms of the years over the MTEF period. There are issues around, and which I think Nokzola also have dealt with, the recapitalization of farms. And I want to believe that you are using recapitalization not as a program, because in the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform then there was that recapitalization program. And what we do know now is that, well, that has been phased out. They've introduced land development support, which in my view, it's just a name change. So I'll be very much interested in what is your recommendation. I mean, now that the department incorporates work of former DAF and former Rural Development and Land Reform Department. Now you have LDS, you have blended finance and all this, which are meant to begin to address some of the challenges that we experienced in the previous department. So it would be interesting for members to look at the recommendations that we have put and then think about how we can address these issues. But in earlier observations, I think Ms. Nkaje did mention how conceptualization of some of these programs in some instances it's problematic in the sense that they are scattered all over. And you have LDS, which seem to be supporting the land reform farms, and you have commercialization, which seems to look at agriculture. And how we begin to show integration of all these programs, I think it will be important. I noted those questions, and I do agree that there are those that we did not include as in the summary of observations, but are they in the discussion in the report? And as members have observed, we will then bring them into the summary of observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manenje. Honorable members, is there anything that you feel at this juncture the budget vote report has missed out before we hop on to recommendations? And can have just indicate if there's something you feel we have missed out on the report?
Chair?
Okay, yes.
Chair, I just want to come to the business rescue issue because I feel that the term is a very strong term. When a business is under business rescue, it requires to appoint a business rescue practitioner. So I think the line here of saying the land bank is under business rescue is not correct, and we need to correct as a committee. Thanks, Chair.
Continue, Honorable Masipa. Replace it with what? If you say it's issue with business rescue, what do
I
you
think it's
replace?
maybe we can just use financial stress.
Financially distressed.
Financially distressed, yeah, rather than be in business rescue. Because when it's in business rescue, then the company or the land bank will need to appoint a business rescue practitioner, the same way as the SAA is. So at the moment, land bank is experiencing financial or liquidity problem, and they are engaging with the market in order to secure funding to continue with their operation. And they did obviously make requests to the Treasury to assist with the funding. So I will definitely recommend that maybe we use the word financial distress.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will look into that, and I think find that to be the suitable word we use. Let us, honorable members, afford then the content advisors to take us into the recommendations. We can speak to the recommendations so that we can move to the adoption of the report. Dr. Manenje and Mam Kash, can you then take us through the recommendations of the report so that we can conclude on this subject?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm on page 43 of the report. In light of the challenges that have been already highlighted regarding the funding of the department, particularly the reduction in some of the key programs. The first recommendation is for the Minister to engage with the Minister of Finance to discuss the funding needs of the department, and also highlighting that the financial distress, that the not necessarily distress, financial challenges that the ARC and OPP also have, which are linked to the allocation to the total vote. And for example, what Chair?
Sorry, Ma'am Kashe, can we have the Secretariat load up the recommendations so we can follow while Ma'am Kashe and Dr. Manenze speak to the recommendations? Thank you.
Is it up, Chair?
We're still waiting.
On my side, it's up, Chair.
Perfect. You may proceed.
I can see it now, Chair. Okay. And one of the reason why we felt that the minister should further engage with the Minister of Finance, I would like to remind the committee that last year, the committee made a recommendation to the Minister of Finance for the OPP. The OPP is a national business company, the government enterprise, and it is also a national key point. And it's not getting any funding from government. So the committee felt that the OPP need, even if it's an additional once-off, just for it to fast-track the completion of the modernization of the vaccine manufacturing facility. So the response that was given to Treasury didn't speak to the committee's recommendation, and I think it's because the National Treasury doesn't necessarily understand what is the OPP's mandate and how it relates to the work that is done by the department, because the Treasury mentioned the additional funding that has been allocated to Program 2. So for this reason, it is felt that the minister should further engage with Treasury and see if the OPP can get another once-off funding, and also the ARC as well. And additionally, there are some unfunded mandates that are supposed to be implemented by the department, and one of those is the Strategic Integrated Project for Agro-Logistics. This is coordinated by the NAMC. They have also mentioned again that it's still unfunded, but they have presented some proposals for funding of some of the projects to the president. And the CP11 is also key and essential in the planned master plan because of infrastructure development and also commercialization of smallholder farmers. Currently, infrastructure is funded through conditional grants mainly, and that funding is not enough for infrastructure development for the sector. So this recommendation speaks to some of those funding-related challenges. In terms of the concern with the capacity or the long process or period that the department takes to develop and finalize legislation and policies, the recommendation is that the minister should submit an updated legislation and policy review programs with clear timelines and resources to the committee for the current financial year and the medium term. And the committee will recall that one of the issues that was raised with the APPs was the fact that the planned policies and legislation that were in the strat plan had no timeline. And also there were no specific pieces of legislation or policies that are planned for the current year. The third recommendation is to ensure that critical and funded vacant positions at senior management service level within the department and the entities, particularly the OVG, for the reasons already mentioned, the National Agricultural Marketing Council, although they have mentioned that they were in the process of appointing the CEO and the chairperson of the board, and also the ITB. And members will recall when the department responded on the issue of the reconfigured structure, that there were some positions that they have included in the structure, some of which haven't been filled or they haven't been placement yet. The 7.4, the minister should ensure the development of an action plan to review and integrate the department's existing support programs and grants. The reason for this being that the department developed the National Policy on Comprehensive Producer Development Support to ensure the integration of these support and funding programs. This policy is expected to be implemented, or at least preparations for its implementation will commence during the current financial year. Yet there's still different support programs from the departments as they were operating separately before. For example, the blended finance in terms of commercialization from the former DAF and the land development support from the former Department of Rural Development, in addition to the conditional grants. For example, CASP was meant to support land reform beneficiaries and other producers. So there is still duplication, which maybe the department will need to clarify at some stage. (7.5) Ensure that the department development guidelines and a monitoring and evaluation reporting framework for conditional grants and all funds that have been transferred to third parties, such as the land bank, for developing farmers and transformation. In the case of land bank, to ensure that the utilization of funds such as Agri-BEE, which is for sector transformation, and the blended scheme, the committee gets a report on this on a regular basis. In this regard, the department should report to Parliament on its M&E activities during each quarterly briefing. 7.6. The minister should submit to Parliament comprehensive progress reports on the implementation of the commercialization of black producers through the blended scheme, the Agri-BEE fund, and the support of land reform farms through the land development support program. 7.7. Strengthen oversight and support to the department's entities to ensure the implementation of their mandates as legislated in the acts that establish the entities, and also to address challenges in respect of effective implementation of their mandates. For example, the underfunding of the ARC is a continuing matter which the committee felt that it needs intervention so that the ARC can specifically focus on its mandate, including the protracted construction of the FMD facility. The OBP has inability to secure additional funding for some of its activities, despite the entity being a national key point, and also the challenges with securing a government market to ensure provinces secure vaccines from the OBP. And also in terms of entities, the OVG's governance and human resources challenges. These have compounded the OVG's ability to fulfill its mandate. 7.8, it's in respect of the National Red Meat Development Program. In this regard, it is recommended that the Minister ensures that the department collaborates with the NAMC to develop a strategy for sourcing support for the continuation of the program, which has played a crucial role in improving communal livestock farmers' profit by linking them to markets in the 3 provinces where the program has been implemented. The 7.9, ensure the alignment of the department and the entity's activities through its plans, that is the strategic plans and APPs, to ensure they work towards a common goal and impactful outcomes. I think I've already spoken to the specific roles in terms of the department, the NAMC and the EC for capacitating smallholder farmers for market access. For the development of communal livestock farmers through the National Red Meat Development Program, as mentioned in 7.8. Also the clarification of roles in terms of the role of the national department, the provinces, the NAMC and the ARC. The ARC is also implementing animal improvement programs in addition to research, and also the Kawana Fats or the KYD. In this regard, both the ARC and the department have targets on this program, and also given the fact that for the past 2 financial years, this target hasn't been met on the part of the ARC due to the department not paying the debt that was due to the ARC for the implementation of the program. 7.10, one of the key mandates of the department, as mentioned in its impact statement, is food security. In this regard, there's a need to strengthen the department's contribution to the implementation of the national policy on food and nutrition security. This policy is intergovernmental in nature, and it is implemented through the president. And there are different departments playing a role in its implementation. So with respect to this department, there's need for streamlining food security initiatives within the departments to maximize availability and food availability and stability, and also measuring the impact of its interventions with respect to food security. In this regard, the department is expected to submit progress reports that quantify primary production activities for both crops in terms of yields and livestock in terms of reproductive capacity. For example, where the department has intervened to assist livestock farmers, have there been improvement in, for example, calving or lambing rates of communal livestock production system, and also the specific funding instruments and resource allocation for each activity. I will let Dr. Manenje continue with 7.11 onwards.
Dr. Manenje?
Yeah, thank you so much. So up to this far, members would have realized that how the recommendations have been structured is to look at the department holistically. So, for instance, recommendations around the capacity, the OVG, the Ingonyama Trust Board has sort of been included in the recommendations around capacity for the entities. So, if we talk about legislation and policy, have been included in that recommendations around policy and legislation, and that the department must submit a plan around that. So, and if we talk about post-settlement support issues, Knox in detail really talked about those farmer support programs. Now, what we are getting into here is the operations of the Commission on Restitution of Land Rights. Because of the observation up there that says, well, the committee is not happy with the two performance indicators. We're saying the minister must ensure that the Chief Land Claims Commissioner submit a comprehensive plan that outlines its strategic focus over the next 3 years, outlining key performance indicators in addition to the two that were included in the APP of the department. With 7.12, fast track the process to ensure that the Commission on Restitution of Land Rights is restored to its status of a full commission, not a sub-program of the department. Further ensure that it's fully resourced with capacity, with capable regional land claims commissioners located in each province with delegated authority to settle land claims within the available financial resources. The next thing relates to the tenure issues with 713. Develop clear protocols and standard operating procedures to guide referral of matters to the Legal Aid Board, taking into consideration a need to build internal capacity of alternative conflict resolution mechanisms in land tenure to avoid costly and lengthy court battles. Present, that's 714, present progress report on a quarterly basis detailing the work done with the special master to settle labor tenants' claims. Further indicate post-settlement support interventions for each settled claim, that is labor tenants, and security of tenure for members of labor tenant communities in settled claims. 715, ensure that the Ingonyama Trust Board officially tables its 2021 budget in Parliament by submitting an addendum to the APP it tabled earlier this year. The budget should reflect the purpose for which the ITB was established. That is to ensure that the administration of the trust land is for the material benefit to the traditional communities residing on the land in question. Minister must also investigate the underlying causes of multiple land labor disputes between the ITB and many of its senior management, resulting in the paralysis of the executive management of the ITB, which is undesirable and affects efficiency of the ITB. The investigation and the report, which must include proposed interventions, should be completed within 3 months and submitted to the committee within a month of completion of that report. Minister must also fast track the clarification of the mandate of the OVG where necessary. Where necessary, legislative amendments must be initiated without delay. And lastly, to create capacity to speed up development of policy, especially review of existing land policy and development and rural land policy and development of rural development policy, including legislation envisaged in Section 25 and Section 25.6 of the Commission. Section 25.5 it's about the land redistribution legislation, and the department spoke about that bill, which they said, well, they will be working on it, but they're waiting for the conclusion of the parliamentary process on expropriation of land without compensation. 25.6 is about land tenure. We know that there is no legislation that comprehensively deals with security of tenure in the communal areas of this country, except for that temporary mechanism called which we call interim IPILRA, interim protection of informal land rights. So I think this links to the recommendation made above about that capacity, but we elevated this as it is one of the key issues that I think the country is grappling with right now. Thank you, Chair. We've concluded by saying that the recommendations, the timeline at the end, that within 3 months after the adoption of this report by the National Assembly, the Minister should submit to Parliament responses to the above recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Chair, I just want to add one issue, which was mentioned in respect of drought or the drought strategy. I think one issue that we didn't highlight when we started in terms of the recommendations, we just on the recommendations we focused on the broad issues that the committee felt that were not appropriately addressed during the APPs. However, there might be some other specific issues that we haven't included in the report because responses are expected after 3 months, which the committee has resolved on in its minutes, which we felt that the department can still be called anytime before that 3 months to report on those. And one of the reasons that the drought might not have been included in this time, because it's been a continuing issue, I think for the past 3-4 years. There have been a number of specific recommendations on drought and drought strategy and climate change impact on the sector that the committee has made recommendations on in its 2019 budgetary review report. So, I don't know what's happening with the sound, but I think in the next few weeks, the department is expected to respond on those. That's one of the reasons why we possibly left out some of the recommendations that the committee feels strongly about, one of those being drought. So the department is expected as part of its finalization of quarterly reports to also respond on the budgetary review recommendations. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Mam Kasha, as well as Dr. Mandenje, for the recommendations you've put before the Portfolio Committee on the budget vote report. Honorable members, there's the recommendations. Do you have anything else you would like to add upon what has been put to us? Let us start with Honorable Capa.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I think the recommendations are comprehensive and capture the observations the committee made. Earlier on, Dr. Manenze indicated, Chair, that we would have to coin a recommendation along the support programs, your LDS and everything that seeks to support farmers. Chair, I think that should find an expression in our recommendations, that the department should streamline all the farmer support programs from both the former DAF and Dr. DLR in order to maximize the resources and enhance impact. It is very key, Chair, like he has explained. It's worrisome that we have so many concepts, programs, and everything. And if we are not careful, everything is going to fall into cracks because we will think something is being handled by the other program, A support, or we'll find even double dipping, a farmer benefiting from both because it comes way back from the former departments. Now, with this measure, we would want them to streamline so that we maximize the impact and also pool resources as it is the aim. I think that is the only thing that I think should find also expression in that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chapter. And we have Honorable Chwete.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, the recommendation are captured well. It's just what I've raised earlier on. Otherwise, I'm covered fully, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mbabama.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I am a bit worried about the Ngonyama Trust, and I agree with the recommendations that have been tabled. I just have an idea that I would like to put on the table and see what the committee thinks about it. First of all, I'd like to highlight a couple of things around the Ngonyama Trust. Number one, I've noticed a reluctance on the part of the board to account for any monies or funds that are over and above the allocation from government. I've noticed that they have been very reluctant to tell us how the communities have benefited, what exactly have been done with the funds over and above the 20 million, that's 20 plus minus 22 million that they get from government. We have also noticed that there has been no 2020-21 budget submitted with the ATP as said in this report. We've also noticed that government has withheld allocation of 22 million of the 22 million pending the submission of the documentation. We've also noticed that there are serious HR problems within the entity. And over the years, we've also noticed that there have been negative audit outcomes from the Ngonyama Trust. Now, my thinking around the Ngonyama Trust is that, and please correct me, members and the chair if I'm wrong, is that it seems like the Ngonyama Trust board feels that they are only required to report on the 22 million and what happens around the 22 million. Otherwise, my feeling is that the revenue from their mining rights, from their leases, from their levies, it seems like the Ngonyama Trust feels that, the department has nothing to do with it, and neither has Parliament got anything to do with it. That is just the feeling that I've got, having sat in listening to presentations by the Ngonyama Trust, not only now in the 6th Parliament, but also in the 5th Parliament. And I am wondering why we are tiptoeing around the Ngonyama Trust. And one of the recommendations that I'd like to put on the table, in light of what I've said in my opening remarks, is that the Ngonyama Trust should be put under administration. And it's an idea that I'm putting on the table for the members to think about in terms of adding that to the recommendation. When does an entity, when do we put an entity under administration? And if there is any entity that needs to be put under administration, as far as I'm concerned, it's the Ngonyama Trust. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mamu Babama. And we have Ntate Matias.
Thanks, Serge. Look, Chair, it is the responsibility of the committee to enhance and enrich the work of Parliament in terms of oversight and all of that. But at the same time, it's not the responsibility of the opposition to rescue government, right? Do you agree, Chair?
Come again, Dr.
Okay.
Matthias.
Let's pass that. Look, Chair.
Okay.
Let's pass that. Look, Chair, in the observation as well as in the recommendations, we must highlight that the committee is not really happy with the manner in which the two erstwhile departments have been, the merger as well as the reconfiguration has been driven. It lacks strategic vision, it lacks strategic oversight by the ministry, and it has been unreasonably costly. We're yet to be told how much money has been spent for the merger and the reconfiguration of the two erstwhile departments. It's a concerning matter. And there is no alignment of various components of the same erstwhile department, now called Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development. Two, we must express with concern that an absence of monitoring and evaluation framework in the department, it's a matter of serious concern, which the committee must raise because it affects the committee as well as Parliament to effect accountability and ensure that there is service delivery and value for money. An example of this, there are many examples that one can cite, but example in this case is the NARISEC situation. It's a clear case of lack of monitoring and evaluation framework. People do as they please. Thirdly is about lack of oversight mechanisms on the land bank. And we must admit now that the land bank is bankrupt. And it is rightly, though we don't have the report as yet, we must accept now that the report that the madam has been referring to, which talks about the land bank being under junk status, that report is a valid report and presented before the committee. The land bank, we must admit that is bankrupt and it needs some form of rescue. And until that time is been rescued and it is willing to account and to report directly or indirectly to the committee, I recommend and advise that the committee must ask the department to withhold all financial or budget allocations and transfer to the land bank until such time that we have a full and comprehensive report on the state of the land bank. We cannot continue to put money into the land bank without knowing what the money is used for. There's no detailed clarity on the 1.2 million set aside for the COVID-19. How is the money going to be utilized? There's no clarity about that. For example, the 20 million that has been set aside to be transferred to the traditional authorities for purchasing of gloves and soap and things like that. There's no clarity on how that 20 million and 1.2 million is going to be utilized. It's a matter of serious concern. We need the department to present to the committee a program or a plan in which the 1.2 million is going to be utilized, including the 20 million to the traditional authorities. On the food security in the context of COVID-19, Chair, the department is a lead.
Let us conclude, Dr. Matthias. Please conclude.
The department is the lead agency to drive food security in the country. And yet there's no bank, there's no food bank that the department can point at and say, in the context of the COVID-19, we have established a food bank. We are collecting food wherever is found, in reservations and in reservoirs and silos, wherever the food can be found, to feed the most vulnerable. Lastly, there is clear institutional overlaps between a variety of agencies, the OVG, the OBP, and the OS, and a whole range of these things, agencies. The department must find some realignment between them, because some of them are mandated to undertake research on a variety of issues, on finding vaccines and all of that. And there's clear overlap between these agencies. There's a need that they must be relooked and perhaps be realigned. Lastly is on the issue of the...
Thank you, Ntate Matthias. That was the last point you were on. Can we move on to Honorable Capa?
Chair, I am covered, Chair, because the part, I'm not sure that it would be relevant today, the part that maybe we need clarity on how we can say fully that Ngonyama Trust is the entity of the department without doubt. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And we have Honorable Masipa.
Chair, I think I'm covered in a number of areas. The one thing that I just want to say is that the report is quite comprehensive, and with the land bank is quite clear that the department needs to have their monitoring in place to ensure that they come to us and account for the money that they put into land bank for various programs. But I also want to say that to add other programs that maybe we need to look at, that the department report to us regarding their use in agriculture. There are job funds that are created and that don't go through the land bank, but they also, go through other, they don't go through the department, they go through other channels which are supporting agriculture, and they're being used by land bank. So I believe that maybe, the report should also just say, all support of agriculture, the department must try and provide us a monitoring and evaluation of those support that are existing in agriculture, that are coming directly from Treasury for that matter. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Briet.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to concur with Honourable Hlape. I think that it is important to see a consolidation and to specifically mention it within our recommendations, that we see a consolidation within the programs, and I think, as Honourable Muntwedi mentioned, a consolidation, and I'm not clear how to word it, but in terms of our entities, that we should see a plan forward in terms of how to handle both the programs and the entities, to ensure that we do not have just a renaming of something from RECAP to LDS, and actually have a lot of programs, but none of them actually specifically assist our farmers and assist our rural communities. I think that is a great problem. I also heard what the content advisor said with regard to drought, but I do feel, and I hope I can convince the committee, that specifically in speaking towards food security, as Honourable Matthias has said as well, and being one of the core mandates of the department, I do feel, and specifically taking into account agriculture. Sorry, I've been speaking Afrikaans and English so dear mekaar that that I don't have all my English words up today, but being the custodian, I do, however, strongly feel that, and the minister herself has mentioned it numerous times, that the way we look at drought and the way we look at drought relief the way we look at farming in South Africa needs to change. So I do hear the content advisors, but I really do feel that maybe in a way to say for food security's sake in South Africa, the department needs to come with a plan, needs to holistically look at how we are assisting our farmers, both our small scale, our subsistence, but our commercial farmers in terms of drought. Because as we've mentioned many times, to a large extent, the department is leaning on Land Bank to provide that support to say, for example, commercial farmers. But we are seeing that they are physically bankrupt. They have been downgraded to junk status, and that is not necessarily going to be the help that those farmers need. So I really strongly feel that just as a flag point or as a mention, and then maybe just to add it under notes of concern, to add that the department really needs to look at that and work at a solution in terms of that. I also agree with the land bank issues, and I think we need to have maybe in a stage a joint meeting with our Standing Committee on Finance, seeing as land bank falls under Treasury as an entity there, to actually get a way forward in terms of land bank, because I have to say I'm also worried about the future of land bank, the way we seem to be plowing money into that and not actually be getting any satisfactory comeback from them, or actually on the ground that we can actually see what is being done. Then maybe, Chairperson, and I would like to, I know it is not specifically referred to in the APPs, but Honourable Matisi did say that should we not provide a recommendation in terms of COVID-19, in terms of saying that we need to see a report, or does the committee feel that we have actually sufficiently handled COVID-19 and recommendations in that regard in our previous interactions with the department? But Chairperson, that would briefly just be mine. I do like the holistic approach of the recommendations. I think that is very good, and I think that will really force the department to see themselves as one department and not as two individual departments anymore. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Priet. Honorable Maslow. Honorable Maslow. Honorable Montwedi. Ntate Montwedi.
Okay, Chair. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
No, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair. Maybe just one is that on the presentation that was made, there's actually no full disclosure in terms of your Commission on Restitution and Land Rights. I think it's number 4 on the overview of the strategic focus of public entities of the department. All the other, it's on the Commission of Restitution and of Land Rights and on the honest port biological products. There's no financial disclosure there, but with all the other entities, there is that disclosure. We would want to get a full disclosure on that, Chair. The other issue, Chair, is that when we had a meeting 2 weeks ago with entities, I'm speaking on recommendation 1, there was an admission by OBP that there's a steady drop in revenue of the OBP. Now, I am of the view that as part of the recommendations on the OBP, we had long recommended that the Minister of the Department must engage the Minister of Finance to see what it is that they can do in order to make sure that OBP gets to supply all provinces with vaccines, that the OBP do not have to be subjected to a competitive process when they have to supply provinces with vaccine. Now, I'm not sure, because the minister there on recommendation, it says she must actually approach the Minister of Finance. Can't we add that as part of the agenda when the minister goes and meets the Minister of Finance? Because that will actually help the OBP in order to increase the revenue that the OBP is actually getting, Chair. Now, the other issues on the land development and support, Chair, the new name. It was before known as the recapitalization. With that, Chair, that day Dr. Manenze said he would like to hear the recommendation thereof. The recommendation is the land allocation must be coupled together with the land development support. Because in most instances, the land that the department buys for farmers, your OVG takes 125 days to finalize valuations on properties. Now, during that period, productive farms are bought that are on the market. They get bought by private individuals. Therefore, government is left with farms that in most instances are dilapidated. Now, that on its own affects productivity at the farm. Now, the proposal is that as soon as land is allocated to somebody, let land development support go there. That person must be assisted so that there must be continuation of productivity in that particular farm. Chair. The last one is on the Ingonyama Trust. I'm not sure if there's the interministerial committee actually is serious on engaging the Ingonyama Trust, because as Mbabama has said, Ingonyama Trust is not fully accountable to the committee. There's a portion of the trust of the money they receive from the department that they say is. But as for the other revenue of the Ingonyama Trust, is actually not accounted fully, not all accounted to the committee. So I'm of the view that the issue of Ingonyama Trust must actually reflect very high on the recommendations that that issue must be dealt with as a matter of agency. Chair. Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Montwedi. Is there any other honorable member that I haven't recognized in terms of the recommendations? Please indicate. Yes, Honorable Montwedi.
All right, thank you, Chair. The last one, Chair, is with regard to CPAs, this Communal Property Association. I can make an example of one CPA in the province of Limpopo, where there's about 1,000 or so, no, 3,000 hectares of land they are sitting at. There are conflicts in the CPA. Currently, it's been 6 years. There's no production in that 3,000 hectares of land. And the CPA is citing conflicts, and the department has said it does not have internal capacity to capacitate CPAs to be compliant with the Act. Now, the other issue is with litigations that CPAs find themselves in. I want to check, Chair, can the department consider assisting CPAs with litigations, because at some point they end up leaving the land not productive and somebody's just using their land without their consent because he or she's taking them to court. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, if there is no other honorable members that have not had a bite, let me take this opportunity also to talk to some of the recommendations that I feel we need to have looked into. I think the issue of the debt owed to the ARC by the department needs to be attended to and put as a recommendation to the department that this debt must be prioritized and paid in full. We had in our earlier engagements requested that the department must settle this debt by the 31st of March. That was not achieved. The minister has taken responsibility to prioritize the full payment and settlement of the debt to the ARC. We should be able to put that as a recommendation and also ensure that we put a date to it. If it is to be within this fiscal, then we should put it as such. Then I'd like to also come to the issue of the struggle for liberation was not about anything else except that of land. And we need to make sure that the outstanding land claims are immediately attended to and settled by the Land Claims Commission. I would like us to ensure in the recommendation that finds it is located within that, so that the issue of land is prioritized by the department to ensure that our people indeed have access to land. If I may also lament, as honorable members have done, on the issue of land bank, particularly with the view of supporting small-scale farmers. We need to get a full understanding as to what has happened to the monies that were afforded to the land bank, particularly for the view of supporting small-scale farmers, and somewhat then come up with a recommendation for the department to look into those issues, so that if the land bank is financially distressed, we can be able to have a solution into ensuring that the support that is much needed is given to small-scale farmers. But honorable members, the issue that comes to Ingonyama Transport, I have always held the view that we live in a constitutional democracy. And if this model of Ingonyama Transport is exemplary, then it should be duplicated and implemented in all other kingdoms. We do have many kingdoms that have played a role in our struggle for liberation and have been able to be left aside in terms of their responsibility in their mandated areas. For example, His Majesty King Rabulana of the Vendors doesn't have such a trust. His Majesty King Skukuni doesn't have such a trust. Her Majesty Queen Mjaji doesn't have such a trust. So if this trust is to be applauded and it is doing exactly what it was intended to, we should be able to see it being replicated and implemented in the other monarchs. But with the challenges that we have been facing, with the Ngonyama Trust's failure to account for the 22 million, if not 28 million that is being given through the department, but also a total failure of accountability in the levies that they are able to levy from all other entities such as mining in the land of Ngonyama Trust. I am of the view, honorable members, that we should take the stance and the position that monies to be put to Ngonyama Trust must be suspended until we have had a full review on the role of Ngonyama Trust. Honorable Muntwedi speaks about an interministerial committee that was to engage with Ngonyama Trust. We have still to date not had any report in terms of what that engagement has yielded. I therefore want to support Honorable Mbabama and take the stance that the monies to Ngonyama Trust must be suspended, and we should be able to look at and review the role of Ngonyama Trust. If the department is to support such a trust, then it should be able to ensure that, as we are a constitutional democracy with many kingdoms in the country, we are able to support all kingdoms equally so, with the very same amount, and put a system and model in place that we can be able to do oversight and accountability on it. That is my contribution, honorable members, as far as the recommendations are concerned. And we have the content advisors give responses to this, and then we take it from their responses. We can move to the adoption of the report with amendments as they've been indicated by the honorable members. Can we have Mam Kashe and Dr. Manenje give responses?
Chair? Hello, Chair?
Yes.
Who's
that? Dr. Matthias?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm pleased that contradictions are now sharpening within the traditional leadership and the various, what you refer to as various kingdoms in the country. It's good that these contradictions are elevated to this level so that Parliament can frankly look into the Ngonyama Trust. But that would be a debate for another day. What is key now is that the land which is in the hands of people who took the land from a people forcefully, that land should be expropriated without compensation. The land which is in the hands of the Ngonyama Trust is already in the people's hands. All what needs to be done is that it must be confirmed and reaffirmed that that land also belongs to the people. I fully agree with you that money given to the Ngonyama Trust perhaps must be suspended until clarity is found. But the point I want to make is about the role of the department in the trade agreement on African continental free trade. We received we got a presentation a few days ago about this matter, and our view is that this matter must be prioritized by the department, and the minister must give it the necessary attention, because this is going to help the continent to integrate and to unite. And in the unity of the country, we are going to see massive agricultural development. We're going to see industrialization taking place. And this will also be in the interest of ensuring that we protect local agricultural produce against hostile foreign and international markets, and ensure that we determine our own prices and trade freely as African countries. So let's call upon the department to prioritize this matter post the coronavirus. Don't even have to wait for that because people need food now and they cannot wait for after the virus is gone. This matter must be prioritized and must ensure that we receive regular update from the department. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Phil. So we had the minister. The issue of the Africa Free Trade Agreement was of real priority, particularly with His Excellency President Cyril Matamela Ramaphosa having been the chair of the African Union. It was already implemented to take initiative on the 1st of July. But as the challenges posed by COVID-19 as well as the lockdown, we have had to shift that date. We will therefore be looking forward as to what is the next possible date, having looked at the issues of challenges posed by COVID-19 as to how we can be able to get back on track and be able to implement this Africa Free Trade Agreement. Thank you for that input. Mam Kashe and Dr. Manenje, please proceed. You've got 10 minutes to conclude on the report so that we may move to the adoption of it. Honorable members, bear in mind that we still have 3 minutes that we need to adopt in this session. Thank you. Amqashe. Unmute your mic. Amqashe. Dr. Manende.
Hi, Chair. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah.
Yes, we
Yeah.
can hear you and we can see you.
Okay. I thought Ms. Mqashe will lead, but we welcome the suggestions on the recommendations, and I agree. We will include the recommendation around streamlining the post-settlement or farmer development support, as it was ably articulated by honourable members. That also includes reflecting on the, in the discussion in the report, we do mention this thing about the public entities. I think we will have to look at that formulation and see how we put that together. But I think Nokuzola will articulate best on how that can be dealt with. There's a recommendation that's coming up strongly around the Ingonyama Trust Board. And the issues that were raised, the reluctance to account, no clear benefits to traditional communities. If they are not being reported on, no budget tabled, although it was there in the PowerPoint slides, but when what was tabled in Parliament, we did not have that. So what did this recommendation tell us? The recommendations, okay, there are two things. We had that place it on administration. We had that suspend the allocation, the budget allocation, the transfer from the department. But what it raises is then what is the committee program? And that's not a matter of the recommendation. I think this committee must then have a plan of action. What is it that the committee is going to do? But I thought maybe that members should clarify. What is it that we are saying? We place it under, we recommend placing it under administration, or we then say no administration, but we ensure that the funds that goes to the ITB are suspended while the committee has engagement, particularly around the IMC work, which this committee is yet to receive feedback on. Secondly, we still are waiting for the report from the Ingonyama Trust Board on the amounts that have been distributed to members of communities, or its program that benefits members of traditional communities, not only training and capacity building of traditional councils, or any other oversight mechanism. So all I request is maybe members clarify there what, is it the same thing? Where do we go with that? And I was also thinking loudly here and say, if we are going to say we place it under administration, and maybe we should ask for legal advice around that, how that is done, the procedures and that. But that's something that I think members can just clarify. Are we going to include a recommendation on the Communal Property Association, as it came very strongly? The issue around provision of the support when we allocate funds, when government allocates funds, that it should be coupled with post-settlement support. It is an important matter. We did think about that, but because on paper that's what needs to happen. The reason why the department had a recapitalization and development support program, it's precisely to address the question that Honorable Montwedi is raising. So, and even with the land development support, that was the idea. Perhaps the issue there is that program adequate enough to also with the financial constraints and limitation, is it possible to give financial support or any other form of support to everyone who acquires land? So, do we put a recommendations that says when you allocate land, provide support? And I think everybody agrees in the department, everybody agrees. What is it that we are saying? And we will try and find ways to strengthen that, just in terms of allocation, what it means for development support. And I suggest that we link it with the recommendations that members made around the consolidation of all farmer support programs, so that we maximize unlimited support. I think basically it links there. If we are to begin to look at this department beyond former rural development and agriculture as one department, say if we are doing a consolidation from CAS, from the BFM to LDS, support should be provided across the board. So we will look at that. We did not get what Honorable Montwedi was talking about when he said financial disclosure. We are assuming that he wants to see the amount allocated to the commission. And what in the report, you will see that there is, because the APP doesn't allocate money to the commission as it says, it allocates money to a sub-program called restitution. But then from Parliament side, we are looking at restitution as a commission. So you're taking that money for that sub-program, and that's the budget for the commission. I'm not too sure whether our assumption is right. When you spoke about financial disclosure, are you talking about the budget allocation? In that case, that money is already indicated in the report. Lastly, the Ingonyama Trust Board, the concern, okay, that we should elevate this. How we are going to do it, I think in terms, we will highlight the problem, the critical challenges raised, and I think Honorable Mbambama really went into detail about what those issues is, so that we come up with the recommendation. All I'm asking the committee is just clarify in sort of one word, if I were to say so, and say, is it, are we recommending withholding of the budget, the money, or administration, or is it the same thing? Thank you. Ms. Mkaija will add on what I did not touch.
Thank you. Ma'am Tasha.
Hi, Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Please proceed.
My apologies. My screen is freezing here somehow. I think Dr. Manenja has touched on the coordination of particularly streamlining. It's included slightly on 7.4, but we'll strengthen that in terms of streamlining support programs. In terms of the withholding, the department withholding funds transferred to the land bank until the bank has been rescued, I think what we recommended was that, because we are not sure how long that will take, and Treasury has already appropriated those funds that the department should transfer to the land bank for specific programs, in order not to disadvantage the farmers that are supposed to be assisted through those programs. What we were emphasizing is for the department to have an accountability framework, and also a monitoring and evaluation framework, including a reporting structure, for example, on a quarterly basis, on how the land bank is utilizing the funds and how it's implementing the programs. The others are noted and will strengthen. Mrs. Briet also emphasized the importance of the development of a drought strategy for all farmers, and to also emphasize it in the observation and conclusion, the recommendations that will be included. With respect, since this report is a budget vote, so it's funds from that have been appropriated to the department, including those that are transferred to entities. The OBP doesn't get an allocation, and so is the PPECB. If Mr. Montreat was referring to the table, I think it's table 4. That's why there's nothing, there's blanks under the OBP and PPCB because they don't get transfers from the vote. However, in the discussion of the entity, there is a budget, I think of 184 million, which is funds that the entity has raised by itself. The provincial procurement that will be added to strengthen the committee recommendation in terms of 7.1 as part of the discussions of the minister with the Minister of Finance in terms of support to the APP. The recommendations, the additional recommendations about the ARC, including the debt that is owed by the department, will also be for emphasis, will be added in the recommendations. And also the recommendation on the prioritization of the African Continental Free Trade Area, its implementation to assist local farmers to trade with other African countries. I'm not sure if there's anything I've left out. In terms of COVID, there's been, with the engagements, last week, there was comprehensive questions as raised by members, including committee resolutions with respect to COVID-19 that have been forwarded to the department for response. And since that is a disaster, it's an urgent matter, it's an immediate issue. That's one of the reasons that no recommendation has been included in this budget vote report on that part. And also taking into account the fact that the monies, the 1.3 billion for COVID-19 didn't come from this allocation. It's monies from that were not used in the previous year. So I'm not sure if members still feel strongly that there should be a recommendation about COVID-19, given that the responses to this report will be in after 3 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mam Kashe and Dr. Manenje. Hopefully all the suggestions made by honorable members will be effected in the final report. Honorable members, I will request that with your input that you have made, and the report having been correctly adjusted to give a reflection of your input, can we then move for the adoption of the budget vote report? Can I have a mover for the adoption?
Chair, I move for the adoption of this budget vote report.
Thank you, Honorable Klape. And we have someone to second the adoption.
Yes, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chwete, for
I second the adoption. I second the adoption of the budget report, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable members, our budget vote report is formally adopted. It will therefore be sent to you the final document as to what you have given input on today. Then it will be sent to the National Assembly. We have the last business of the day, honorable members, minutes of our previous meetings. If I may quickly run through them with yourselves, and then we can be able to conclude our meeting. Can we focus on the minutes of the 18th of February 2020? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7.
There's no page 7.
There's concluding remarks there, as well as adjournment, which is point 7 and point 8. So I've been using the points as pages, honorable members, since we don't have that. But can I have a mover for the adoption of the minutes of the 18th of February 2020?
Chairperson, I move.
Thank you, Honorable Briet moves for the adoption of the minutes. Can I have a seconder?
I am seconding Chair, Honorable Mbata.
Thank you, Honorable Mbata. Thanks for joining us. We have seconded the adoption of the minutes of the 18th of February 2020. Let us move on to matters arising, honorable members. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Page 7. If there are no matters arising, honorable members, then we have taken that minutes of the 18th of February 2020 are adopted. Let us move to our second set of minutes, that of the 5th of May 2020. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Thank you, honorable members. Can we have a mover for the adoption of the minutes of the 5th of May 2020?
I move, Chair. I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Honorable Mbabama moves for the adoption of the minutes. Can we have a seconder?
I second the adoption of the minutes, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Masipa. Seconds the adoption of the minutes of the 5th of May 2020. Any matters arising, honorable members? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. If there are no matters arising, honorable members, minutes of the 5th of May have been duly adopted. Let us move on to our third set of minutes, that of the 11th of May 2020. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Thank you, honorable members. Can we have a mover for the adoption of the minutes?
I move for the adoption of the minutes, Chair.
Honorable Trete moves for the adoption of the minutes of the 11th of May 2020. Can we have a seconder?
I move to second the adoption of the minutes, Chair.
That being Honorable Masipa moves for the adoption, for the seconds for the adoption of the minutes. Thank you. Let's move to matters arising, honorable members. Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Thank you, honorable members. With no matters arising, I take it the minutes of the 11th of May have been duly adopted. Can we move to our last set of meetings, of minutes, pardon me, of the 19th of May 2020? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Thank you, honorable members. And we have a mover for the adoption of the minutes of the 19th of May 2020.
Chair, I move for the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Mbata. Moves for the adoption of the minutes of the 19th of May 2020. Can we have a seconder?
Chair, I second the adoption.
Thank you, Honorable Briet. Has seconded the adoption of the minutes of the 19th of May 2020. Any matters arising, honorable members? Page 1. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. Page 5. Page 6. Thank you, honorable members. If there are no matters arising, minutes of the 19th of May 2020.
Chairperson, sorry.
Yes, Honorable Priet.
Sorry, Chairperson, I've just been reading here. I was reading, I didn't quite listen. So I do apologize for that. I just see on page 7
worries,
that
go ahead.
The department would respond in writing to all the questions that were raised in the meeting, and I'm not sure whether we have received that or lost.
Just point out which bullet point are you on?
Oh, now I closed it. Point 7, the last one, Chairperson.
The last one.
The last one with regards to, sorry, I accidentally closed it when I clicked. I just need to reopen
it's 5.5.
5.5.
Yes, exactly. 5.5. Respond in writing to all the questions that were raised in the meeting for both presentations, including follow-up questions that will be sent to the department. Submit responses to the committee by end of business on Friday. I'm not sure whether the committee secretaries have received that yet, because I don't think we have received that yet. Maybe just to flag something to be followed up.
Thank you, Honorable Brett. You coming to the matter I was going to raise in closing. This is just the resolutions in terms of the minutes, and it is correct to talk to that. But I think having put that as a resolution of the committee, we are to follow up on these things. This is why I wanted us to conclude and adopt this. And having adopted the minutes of the 19th of May 2020, we would like to put it to the Secretariat to write officially to the Minister and the Deputy Minister's executive of the ministry that on several meetings that we have had, we have requested for all our questions that have been put to the department to be responded to in writing, as well as the follow-up questions that we were not able to cover in the virtual meeting to be responded to in writing. To date, honorable members, we have not received the answers to those questions. I would like to get the Secretariat to confirm even this week's questions and the responses, which have end of business day today at 5 o'clock. We're supposed to have received. We still have not received anything. Can I put it to the Secretariat to indicate what are we still awaiting for?
Yes, Chair. Hello.
Yes, please continue, Mam Kakaza. We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Can you see me now, Chair? Yeah, yes, Chair, you are correct. You are. Yes, you are correct. We are still waiting for those responses from the meeting, from the meeting and the 19th. We didn't receive anything, Chair, till today.
Can we ask Mamuka Gaza as well as Umanya Hamza to pen it down on a letter so that we can put dissatisfaction of the committee to the Honorable Minister and the executive in the ministry that our questions are not being attended to by the department as per our request. And we would like to ensure that by end of business day today, all the questions and responses by the honorable members have been attended to, so that we can be able to circulate them to all the honorable members so that they can be able to follow up on the issues they have raised. Is that in order, honorable members? Anything else?
We agree, Chair. That should be the way forward.
Agreed. That brings us, honorable members.
Chair, may I come in?
Yes, yes.
Chair, may I come in?
Yes, please go ahead.
Nkosi, Chair. Can I just urge the members, please, and I think the Secretariat as well, that we try and improve on our technology skills in terms of, trying to perfect our meetings going forward. Because I see that we are not using that, but at the bottom of the screen, you have places where you can unmute yourself on the video and on the microphone. And you can also raise your hand if you want to ask a question. You can also see the number of participants, etc., etc. There are also 3 dots there that show the device settings and whether you want a full screen or not, etc., etc. I would just like to urge our members that we use this, because I think it will make it easier on the chair as well if we just raise our hands if we want to talk. And in fact, use this bar. Yeah, that's what they call it, I think. Use this bar at the bottom to improve the quality of our experience. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Mbabama. All of us are catching up with this technology in the virtual meetings. And I think the more we becoming, the more we have meetings, the familiar honorable members are becoming with the usability of the Microsoft systems. I was very happy to see that in the National Assembly virtual meeting, which was on Zoom, we were able to communicate and engage better. And I hope that in time we will also be able to, for our meetings, be able to have a user-friendly system. But we leave that to the parliamentary leadership and also the IT sector to find the best system possible. But do please, honorable members, you are encouraged to continue to see how best to be able to communicate on these virtual meetings. It is always advisable every time when you speak to unmute your microphone, as well as to switch on your video so that you can be seen not only by committee members and those that are in attendance in the meeting, but these meetings are broadcasted live sometimes on DSTV channels 404 and 408. Some are streamed through YouTube and social media. So it is important that we are able to make these meetings accessible to the general public and not only for ourselves. So we urge everyone to please take time to ensure that you are able to utilize the system as best as you can. With that said, we have come to our end of the meeting, and thus the meeting is adjourned. Have a blessed weekend, and Juma Mubarak to those that are having this day of prayer, and those that will be going to synagogues tomorrow and those going to churches on Sunday. Please keep us in your prayers during these challenging times of COVID-19. I thank you. Bye.